Okay, today we are going to be making buttermilk biscuits. As we talked about in class yesterday, there's two groups of breads. Not yesterday, the day before that. What are the two groups of breads? Who can tell me? It has to do with the leavening agent you use. I know you want to raise your hand. Name one. It's yeast breads, right? Yeast breads are the long breads. They take a long time to rise, okay? So the other groups of breads use something else, and they're called quick breads. Very good. What do quick breads use for leavening agents? Air, and mostly all the time, what's the magic powder? Baking powder, baking soda, okay? So as we talked about, the baking powder, the baking soda reacts with acids, right? In the dough. Baking powder, I didn't say this to you guys, but baking soda is basically sodium bicarbonate, just by itself. That's why when you mix it with vinegar, it fizzes up. But baking powder has an acid powder in there as well. And not until moisture is added, right? When the water is added, then they combine and they fizz up, okay? That's why it's called double acting. You can try this at home where if you put baking soda in water, it won't really fizz. If you put baking powder in water, it'll fizz right up. Okay, so we're going to be making a quick bread today, buttermilk biscuits. What we're going to do is I'm going to go over the equipment and the ingredients first, okay? So, for every bread needs what? Flour, right? We're going to be using flour, all-purpose flour. We're using 2 cups. Again, my recipe is not to scale. I'm cooking for you guys, right? I'm doubling the recipe, but your recipe is 2 cups of all-purpose flour. You're also going to need 1 tablespoon of baking powder. It's not baking soda, but baking powder. A 1/4 teaspoon of salt. One-third of a cup of shortening. Okay, I'm using butter instead of here. But remember, shortening is basically what? Butter, or it's a cold fat or a hard fat, right? So at room temperature, it's going to be solid, right? Usually, always comes from what? Plants or animals? Animals, right? So lard would be like a shortening. Butter will work as a shortening. Crisco is a vegetable base, right? Those are trans fats because they've changed it from something that's not normally solid and they made it solid, right? Crisco, that works too. Butter gives the best flavor in my opinion. You can use margarine too. That'll work, okay? But it's got to be cold, super cold. And then lastly is 3/4 cups of milk or buttermilk. I'm using buttermilk. I guess if you call them buttermilk biscuits, you got to use milk. Buttermilk, right? Yeah. Okay. The equipment that I'm going to need. Yeah, like I said, I'm using a knife and cutting board, but that's just real quick. You don't need to list that, okay? You could definitely do this without a knife and a cutting board. We're going to need a pastry cutter, pastry blender. Remember this one? What's this used for? What do we use this for? Mixing the what? The fat and flour, yeah. Because remember, this is hard and this is powdery, right? And it's a big mess. It would be really hard to do it with a knife. And then also by hand is tough. I used to have to do that a lot. French chefs used to make us do it. We'd have to break it. Your fingertips are sore by the end of the day. You're also going to need a wooden spoon, a bench scraper, and and a large bowl. We're also going to need a baking sheet pan, like a cookie sheet pan. Can you put some parchment paper on that for me, William? I like to put parchment paper on everything every time I use a sheet pan, especially in this kitchen. Mine are aluminum, right? They've got some of the oil that's been burnt in them over the years. We don't want that on our food. And vice versa, I don't want to have to scrub the dishes quite a bit, right? You can also line your pan with foil, that's great. Okay, so my first step is going to be to cut my butter or my shortening into some smaller pieces that are more easy to work with. Oh, I need, I told you how much butter, right? 1/3 of a cup. I'm going to measure these. Got the little measurement wheels here. Okay, I want to cut my butter into, I don't know, squares. And lay them out flat. And I'm going to pop these in the freezer. You put them in the fridge at home, whatever. But we want to make sure they're really cold. They've been sitting out for a minute. Can you guys come grab this? Can you put this knife in the sink for me? Beatrice? Yeah, why not? You don't want to do it? Okay, then no. William, can you put this in the freezer for me, Alex? Thank you. Hey! Sharp, knife, good job. Okay, we're going to pop that into the freezer and get it real cold, okay? Super cold. We definitely do not want our butter, just stay right there, okay, William? After you put it in there. We definitely do not want our butter softened. Eventually. I don't want to, eventually, yeah, I don't want to make all the noise. We do not want our butter really soft, okay, or melted at all, okay? That's because we want to chip the butter into little pea-sized granules inside the flour, okay? What happens with biscuits right there? What's the texture of biscuit? Fluffy, and when they come apart like this in flakes, right? They're flaky, okay? Like puff pastry. Have you ever seen puff pastry? That's super flaky, right? That happens because there's layers of butter in between. With the biscuits, we get a little layer of butter here and there, and they create separation in the parts of the biscuit. And then they also, there's a little bit of moisture inside the butter, so when it cooks, it creates steam. We said steam's another leavening agent, right? And it makes a separation, okay? So if we have big chunks, we're only going to get 2 big separations, and the biscuit's going to be kind of lopsided. If we get that a lot in there, we get multiple layers, it's going to have little buttery, beautiful cracks in it, okay? So, our first step is to cut the butter into smaller pieces and put them in the freezer and get them really cold. Okay, we're going to pretend that they were in there for a solid 15 minutes. Okay? Next step is, actually, let's always say we need to preheat our oven too, right? Preheat our oven. Got 450 degrees. 450 degrees. Okay, make sure your rack is in the middle. Okay, we want to bake in the middle of the oven. Another piece of equipment is a whisk. I forgot to mention this. We're going to use a whisk or a sifter. Okay, and we're going to combine all of the dry ingredients So my flour, my salt, baking soda, baking powder, all in there, okay? And we're gonna whisk this together to evenly distribute all that baking powder and baking soda. We do not want that in lumps in the flour. Okay, we're gonna get some biscuits that rise really big and others that are hard hockey pucks. Whisk it up a dozen times or so. Make sure it's really well combined. Okay? Alright. Now we're going to come back to the butter. Alright, and the butter is going to go in to the flour. And this is a hard thing for everybody to remember. Don't hold your pastry cutter with the hand that you just touched the butter with. You'll never be able to grip it, right? A bunch of oil on here, it's going to slip and slide. This is hard work that you're about to do, okay? It's going to make your hands tired. But what we want to do is cut all those chunks of butter. See, they come out a little bit smaller out of the top. Okay? So we just shake those off, or just keep pressing through and they'll come off. This is a good time to get all of your aggression out. Cooking relieves stress. This is why. You can use a food processor for this too. I mean, there's some recipes that they use a food processor. That's really cool when you've got a nice big food processor and you're doing a lot of these. But if you're just doing a small batch and you have a pastry blender, it's less dishes, right? Okay, so I don't know if you guys can see, but the butter, this is like about as big as I want it to be. This is about as big as I want it to be right here, okay? Pea-sized granules, and you really want to make sure that there's no more in there. You're going to have to get your hands into the biscuits, right? Biscuits are definitely a labor of love. Wash your hands well, and plan on getting them inside the dough. Alright. This bit's on here, okay? All we have to do is just run it. You're not sharp, right? So just run your fingers down. And then if anything sticks, flour is like a magic weapon to keep food from sticking to your hands. Okay? Because what happens is sticking with moisture. So flour drives that out. If there's any big bits, just break them in half, throw them back in there. Okay. Alright, next we're going to add what? What's our only ingredient left? Huh? Milk or buttermilk. Buttermilk we're using, okay? If you don't have buttermilk at home, don't worry about it. Use milk. That works just fine. Now they're milk biscuits, not buttermilk biscuits. Okay? Here we're going to add the buttermilk in. And then we're going to stir this up, right? Uh-oh, what happened? Everybody makes this mistake, right? What did I use? Yes, and do I want to use a whisk? No. No, because now I got to dig it all out of there. Okay? What should I have used? With a spoon. That's why I have them pulled out. Okay? I did this on purpose. Hopefully, making this mistake on purpose in front of you guys will help remind you not to do it. Okay? Everybody always does that. Okay, so see my sticky hands right here? No problem. Well, yeah, it kind of is because I don't have any extra flour. But, Lynn, can you give me just a small amount of flour in here? I'll show you guys what you do if this happens. Again, this is why it's important to wash your hands well when you're cooking, right? We are going to have to get our hands in there. Okay? We are going to need some flour anyways for dusting the table. So what I do is I don't take too much flour out because we're going to throw this away at the end. Okay? We don't mix it back into the old flour. You put some dry flour in your hands and it'll help you remove the lumped up bits. Okay? And if you don't really want to get that, you guys don't want to get that back in your dough, that's fine. Go to the garbage can and do it. Okay? A little flour on your hands and rub it really thin. That's why we don't use jewelry, extra bracelets, such like that. Okay? So a little flour, rub it around, comes right off. Okay, so let's get back to it. William, I'm all done here. Set it the same. You're going to get the butter. Just keep trying to put the butter back. Okay, so now we're going to mix with a wooden spoon. Okay, and it's very important at this point to not over mix it. So anybody who did their work already, their book work, a big part of quick breads is and biscuits especially, it's important to not over mix it. Why? What's going to happen if you over mix flour when it has moisture in there? No, that's not it. It doesn't have to do anything with the rising. Okay, we haven't gone over this yet, so I'm just going to give it to you. When you incorporate moisture into the flour and you move it, right? You rub it up against each other, especially with something like a whisk or something like that. You develop something inside the flour. It's the protein. Anybody remember what the protein is called inside the flour? It's the one that lots of people are allergic to now and they can't eat. Gluten, okay? Gluten is a super cool thing, right? Or it's, I don't know, a lot of people don't think it's super cool if they can't eat it. But when you're making bread, it's like when you understand gluten, you can identify different breads and you can tell how they made it, right? So the crustier, hard baguette type breads, the ones that have the big bubbles in them, right? Those really rustic breads, those have had the gluten stretched a lot. So when you make the dough, you knead it, you stretch it for a long time, okay? The longer you do that, it makes the gluten really tough. And when you bake it, it's like a piece of rubber, like a rubber balloon, okay? When you blow air into a rubber balloon, it inflates and it holds the air, okay? So if you're going for something like that, then yes, right? Rubber's going to be chewy, right? The idea, same thing. But with biscuits, we want soft and delicate. Same thing with like muffins, right? You don't want crusty, chewy muffins, right? So when you make these recipes, you don't overmix. Sometimes you overmix, sometimes you don't. In this case, we're not going to overmix because we do not want to overdevelop the what? Gluten. Very good. We're going to be repeating that quite a bit. Okay, so once I get it here, okay, basically all I want to do is I want to be able to mold it into a ball. Okay, if it's going to do that, we're good. Okay, if it's still crumbly and dry, all you got to do is be able to pick it up and mold it into a baseball. Okay, don't throw it at anybody. Okay, if it's really not doing that, and as you mix it more, it'll get stickier. Okay, it's like pressing a sponge. The water's going to come out more and more. Okay, and it's going to get stickier. But don't worry about that because that's why we have the flour dust. Okay, we're going to bring that out. Okay, I always like to mix it in the bowl a little more by hand. Okay, and your bowl you're going to want nice and clean when you get it out. Okay? If it's not all coming out, don't worry about it. We're going to get it. I promise you, okay? we're going to use that. And then I always like to take one of the more wet ones, okay, and rub it around in there and get everything out that I can, because it's going to be easier to clean if you don't have a bunch of flour in there, okay? All right, now we're on our table. I've cleaned my surface, I've sanitized it, right? So we can work right on top of it. If you're at home, you might want to do this on a cutting board, you know, if your grout's a little dirty or something on the counter. Have yourself a nice clean surface. Okay? Just let it sit, give it a little time, okay? And it is going to settle, the moisture is going to come out, and you won't have it cracking on you anymore. In the meantime, my hands are kind of caked up, so I'm going to go with flour on them. I'm going to clean them. It feels kind of good. It's spongy. Okay. Here comes the magic. I gave you my bench scraper. Can I have that? Bench scraper? Sorry to sink. Here comes the bench scraper. Enter bench scraper. Stage left. Okay. What we're going to do is we're going to use the bench scraper to really get it off, because it's going to want to stick. Okay? So if we try to pull it off every time, we're going to bend it and break it. So this is a magic tool. Okay, you get right underneath it. Okay? Alright. So, you want to keep your bench as clean as possible. Okay? Got your bowling around. Okay? So that right in there. Alright. What we're going to do is we're going to dust it with flour. Okay? Now, a lot of people like dust it with flour like this. Is that dusted? No. So, get the flour, get a good pinch of it, go high up, and do the Salt Bay thing. Right? Dust it. I know you guys are going to have fun with that. Okay, don't get it all over the floor and everything, but we want to evenly dust it, okay? And then we can work with it and mold it out. I forgot a big piece of equipment, didn't I? What else do we need? William. He knows. He's a professional. Okay? So I get a ball, then I need to roll it out with a rolling pin. One more piece of equipment. Rolling pin. Okay? And the rolling pin is awesome. William grabbed me the tiniest rolling pin out alive, which is fine. But we can use the flat edges too. Because what we want is we want to make it like a square. Okay? And we want it even. It really doesn't matter how thick you make it. Of course, that will determine how long it's going to bake. But we're going to go 1/2 inch thick, okay? If you made thicker biscuits, you got to bake them longer. They're going to be doughier on the inside, right? Some people like that. I don't know. But, see, it's not really coming out like a square. So I'll just kind of keep molding it with my hands. Okay, if it comes back tall again, that's fine. Okay, and I roll it back out. Okay, something that's happening though is it's starting to stick on the bottom. So what do I need to do? Bench scrape it up. Flour bake. Okay, doesn't have to be a perfect rectangle, but if you've got something that looks like the continent of Africa or the United States, or you know, something all, it's going to be harder to get the little waste. Okay, so I'm rolling it out. I'll also use this guy. Okay, once it's a 1/2 inch thick, 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch, all of it's even. Okay, we can cut it. And let me show you why I'm trying to get it in a rectangle, which I'm probably not going to worry too much about right now, because I'm going to show you multiple ways to do this. Okay, what do we have to do next? Cut it, right? So, if you're, you can use your bench scraper is the best tool. Okay, if you're doing this at home, you don't have a bench scraper, you can use a knife. That's fine. you use a metal knife on a metal table, what's going to happen? What happens to the edge of your knife?
It gets dull.
It gets dull, yeah. So this thing is dull anyway. So we can cut it, and we can cut it into squares. They're biscuits, right? They're not gonna be all perfect, right? If you want to make them fancy, you can do that, but you can do some triangle deals, right? What's that, guys? You can make squares. That'll be for the chef. And then I'm gonna show you something else. Can I get one of the coffee cups? You need a coffee cup. Where's this? Okay, coffee cup is porcelain, so it can chip, okay? Of course, you know, it's not like you're going to be smashing them out, but you can use a cup, you can use circle cutters, you can use whatever you want, okay? Simple. The only thing with circles is, at the end, you know, if I cut them like this, what's going to happen? I'm going to have a lot of leftover dough. Am I going to throw it away? No. What am I going to do with it?
Reform it.
Reform and roll in the ball. The more we reform it and roll in the ball, we're doing what? We are over mixing it, over developing the gluten. Very good. You guys are paying attention. Okay? So try to get them as close to the edge. When I'm doing this, like, I don't even really care if it's got a little sharp bite out of it, you know, as long as I'm not wasting. That's me at home. But if you're going to be in the professional kitchen, right, you're more worried about your time, right? You're more worried about having to do it all over again. You want to get boom, 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 boom. You want to get your yield right off the bat. Okay, so I didn't do a great job with it, but you guys can see here, it's just move that guy up. This one will bake a little funky looking, but it'll be all right. Okay, so we'll just roll this into a quick ball. It's getting a little sticky. Anytime it's getting sticky, it's not gonna. So you'll see, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna roll it out and leave some cracks and crevices in there, so you guys can see how it turns out. Okay. We're gonna cut these into a couple squares so we identify them. Okay, and those will be the ones that we didn't do such a good job. Okay, and you guys can see. All right. So, once this is all done, what do we need to do? We want a baking pan, okay? So if I put my baking pan right here, what's going to happen? Yeah, it's going to be all messy. So, give yourself some clean working spaces. Okay? The more we clean things, the flour off our hands, right? Before we touch things, I'm going to wash my hands real quick. At least give them a quick rinse so that way I don't get flour all the time. Oh, you got a full size one? Just get a half one. Yeah, half one. We're not making that many biscuits. We're gonna cut these up further. Okay, we didn't make a big recipe, guys. Okay, I'm gonna cut these up. How many am I gonna get? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, everybody will get a bite of one. But don't worry, we're making this next class, okay? Alright? So you guys will get your fill of biscuits next class. And this is double the recipe. I doubled the recipe, guys. So this is, if you're making this at home and you do 1 times the recipe, you're going to get half this. It's perfect for, 3 or 4 people for breakfast. Okay, at this point, if I wanted to, I can make an egg wash. right? Raise your hand if you know what an egg wash is. Okay, we can egg wash it. I can show you guys that during class if you want. That's gonna have a nice sheen to it. You can always take some buttermilk too and brush that on top, and that gives a really nice little light golden brown. Okay, we could take chocolate chips and mix chocolate chips in here. If you're making like a sweet biscuit for breakfast, we can take cheddar cheese and green onion and mix them in. When we're mixing in the buttermilk, we can do, what was the other thing I was going to say? Oh, like if you want to make these for dinner, right? We could put some rosemary in the mix or some herbs, okay? Whatever you want. All right, so we're going to bake these at 450 for 10 to 12 minutes. Okay, we're going to check them at like 8 minutes just to see how they're doing. Everybody's oven's different, okay? Okay, so for 10 to 12 minutes. Any questions in the meantime?
The quantities you gave us, are they already doubled or are they not doubled?
No, those are single. I doubled them. I did twice as much as I told you. We'll record it. Make sure we hit record before I come out. Okay? Do you want to go